VP.FO broke that one.
It seems like maybe it had something to do with disagreements over the recent local elections that come in Uvalde.
Seems like it. And, this whole resignation thing just makes the situation in Vagar even more, well, interesting.
Right.
Trying to get a new government formed there. Both in.fo and VP.fo have been reporting on it, and it's been attempt after attempt to get a coalition going. Nothing yet.
Like a political merry-go-round?
Yeah.
Round and round they go?
Exactly. And speaking of complicated situations, there's all this back and forth on how to fund the Suray-Yartunalim.
Another tunnel, huh?
Right. VP.fo had a piece on the idea of using tolls from the Eysturoy-Yartunalim to help pay for it.
Oh, wow. That's different. Interesting how people who use the Eysturoy-Yartunalim all the time would feel about that.
Yeah.
Like they're paying for two tunnels.
Yeah, for sure. Raises some questions about fairness.
And while we're on the topic of money, potential problems at least,
Mm-hmm.
what about that warning from Sjureyr Skal on the EU sanctions?
Right.
InVodFo and VP.fo both had that, didn't they? What was it about this time?
Same old story. Disagreements on the fishing quotas. Mackerel, mostly. Like a sequel to the Mackerel Day.
Oh, man, the McElstreety. Things were tense back then.
Let's hope it doesn't get to that point again.
Let's hope not. Okay, enough politics for now. Let's talk about something a little more, well, dramatic. Did you see that picture VP.fo had of a stranded helicopter?
Oh, yeah. It was like something out of a movie.
What happened there?
Rock slide on Vestmannavigur. That road on Stramoy completely blocked it off.
Wow.
The helicopter was going to transport a patient, but, well, there it was, stuck.
Nature, huh? You can't predict it.
Nope. And the weather has been a bit wild lately, hasn't it?
Speaking of unpredictable, VP.fo was saying something about strong winds and low pressure systems.
Yeah, been pretty stormy. Better hold on to your hats. Even for us, it's been a lot.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so amidst all the political drama and crazy weather, there's something nice that VP.fo mentioned. Vitskrua Yolakort.
Oh, yeah, the Christmas card campaign, getting kids all over the islands to write Christmas cards.
Love that. It's so nice, especially now when everything is digital,
Yeah.
Getting a real card in the mail, it's special. Spreading some holiday cheer.
Totally.
So, speaking of spreading cheer, did you hear about that film screening at Films Flagnum?
You mean that Israeli-Palestinian documentary?
Yeah, the one VP.fo talked about.
It's a pretty interesting one.
I know. And Maria Johansdottir is going to be there to introduce it. Gives it that local touch,
Exactly. Bringing people together, sharing different perspectives.
And you know what else VP.fo mentioned?
Yeah.
The whole immigration issue.
Yeah.
All that debate on what to do about it.
Yeah, the language thing.
Right. Should immigrants have to learn both Faroese and Danish? Or is Faroese enough?
Tricky question.
It is. I mean, on one hand, knowing both languages, it opens more doors, right? But then again, is it asking too much, making it harder to fit in?
Tough one. It's about finding a good balance, welcoming newcomers, but also keeping our own culture and identity strong.
Absolutely.
Like you said, tricky.
Okay, so before we move on to sports, I want to go back to Bjarne Johansson for a minute. His resignation. We were talking about it earlier, but now that we've talked about all this other political stuff, it makes you think.
Yeah, especially with all these failed coalition talks in Vagar, it's all over the news. In TAFO, VP.fo, everyone's talking about it.
So with him leaving, things are even more complicated now, don't you think? Makes you wonder what's going to happen next.
It does, but we should probably stick to what we know for sure. What's in the news. No guessing.
You're right. So let's just hear what Bjarne Johansson himself had to say. VP.fo had a quote from him about why he resigned.
It was short and to the point. Should we read it?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, here goes.
I dag har jeg meldet mig javna arflakinum og ta som ein beinleides avvæving av tistride og taimum osumum I hava veri I samband vi kommunuvali.
So basically he's saying he left the Social Democrats because of all the fighting and disagreements that came up during the local election.
It goes to show you, even local politics can be pretty intense.
Yeah, it can.
Okay, well, enough politics for now. Let's take a break from all the serious stuff. Time for some sports. What's been happening?
Yeah, what's the latest?
Well, Ternan, our volleyball team, they had a tough loss. VP.fo was talking about it.
Oh, no. Was it a blowout or was it close?
VP.fo said it was really close, so it must have been heartbreaking. For the team and all the fans.
I bet. It's almost worse when it's that close,
For sure. But there's still hope for our national football team, right? They've got that big game against Switzerland coming up. InDotFo's been all over that.
Oh, right. Switzerland's a tough opponent, though. They are. InDotFo mentioned how they're ranked really high. It'll be a tough match, for sure. A real David and Goliath situation.
You never know, though. Maybe they'll surprise us.
Here's hoping. Oh, and speaking of tough matches, Indako also mentioned H71's next game in the European Cup. They're playing against PAOK, the Greek team.
Handball. Big game.
Yeah, H71 are one of our best, but PAOK, they're strong too. It'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Definitely.
Well, I think that wraps things up for this first part of our deep dive into the Faroe Islands news.
Wow, yeah, we covered a lot. Political shakeups, stormy weather, holiday cheer, and some exciting sports. It's been a good mix.
It has, and there's more to come in part 2, so stick around. We'll be right back.
See you soon. Welcome back, everyone. Thinking about that helicopter picture again from VP.fo, it really shows you how fragile things can be here.
I know what you mean. Those roads, like Vestmannavigur, they're so important. For everything.
Exactly. What if something like that happened and the road was blocked for a long time? It wouldn't just be about getting around, it would affect everything. Emergencies, deliveries, you name it.
Makes you realize we have to keep investing in good infrastructure. Roads that can handle whatever comes their way,
Absolutely. Okay, but on a lighter note, let's talk about that Christmas card campaign, Vitskriva Jolakort. VP.fo was saying it's really caught on all over the islands.
It's wonderful, isn't it? Kids these days, they're so used to everything being on screens. Getting a real card written by hand, it's something special. A bit of that old-fashioned holiday magic.
I know, it takes me back when I was a kid waiting for those Christmas cards to arrive. So exciting.
Me too. There's something about a handwritten card that you just don't get with an email or a text. Speaking of things that connect people, what about that documentary at Films Falagnum, the Israeli-Palestinian one that VP.fo mentioned?
That one's really got people talking, especially with Turia Maria Johansdottir introducing it.
Yeah, having her involved makes it even more special. She's such a well-respected filmmaker here.
It's like it shows that we're open to these global conversations, but still with a local voice, a local perspective.
Exactly. Now, back to that immigration issue that VP.O brought up. It seems like there are so many different opinions on the language thing.
Right. Some people say immigrants should learn both Faroese and Danish.
And others say, no, just Faroese is enough.
I can see both sides. Knowing both languages could help people integrate better, more opportunities for jobs, education, that sort of thing.
But then, is it too much to ask? Does it make it harder to fit in?
It's a tricky balance, welcoming people, but also protecting our language and our culture.
For sure. And what are those mandatory integration interviews that VP.O mentioned? Some people say they're really important.
Make sure people are serious about integrating, but then others say it's like too much, too intrusive, unnecessary hurdles, they say.
Finding the right way to do this, the whole integration thing, it's a process. You have to think about all the different perspectives.
Yeah, definitely. It's a big conversation. We didn't really finish talking about the Suðuroyartunnelin funding.
Oh, right. VP.Husso talked about using the tolls from the Suðuroyartunnelins.
Right, to help pay for the new tunnel. Seems practical on the surface, but is it fair to make people who use one tunnel pay for another?
It's a tough question. Who should pay for these big projects? The people who use them directly or everyone?
It's all about financial responsibility and who ends up shouldering the burden.
It'll be interesting to see how they decide to do it. Okay, let's switch gears for a minute. Back to sports. Remember Turnan's volleyball loss? VP.hu made it sound like it was a real nail-biter.
Oh, I know. Those close losses are the worst. They stick with you.
You keep thinking about what could have been.
Exactly. But hey, there's always the national football team, right? Their big game against Switzerland is coming up.
That's right. Indifo has been doing a lot of coverage on that one.
Yeah.
They're saying Switzerland is really strong.
They are. They're ranked really high. It's going to be a real challenge for our team.
But maybe, just maybe, we'll see an upset. It would be amazing.
They never know. And don't forget about HMUN's handball game.
Oh, yeah, they're playing POK in the European Cup.
Big match.
And Dapfo has been following them closely. Those European games are so important.
They put Faroe's handball on the map, It's great for the players and for the whole sport here.
Before we wrap up this part, I want to touch on a couple of other things. First, that warning from Sjur de Scala about potential EU sanctions. Indadfo had a report on that.
Those fishing disagreements.
It's tough. We have to stand up for our interests, especially for something as important as fishing. But we also need to maintain good relationships with other countries.
It's a delicate balancing act. Those negotiations could have a big impact, especially on the economy.
Absolutely. And one more thing. VP.ho had a really interesting article about the Heimastyre slogan, the Home Rule Act.
Oh, yeah, that was thought-provoking.
It makes you wonder if that law from all those years ago, if it's still the right fit for the Faroe Islands today. The world has changed so much.
It's conversation a lot of places are having. How do you balance self-governance with the realities of a globalized world? How do you keep your identity while also being part of something bigger?
It's a lot to think about. Well, that's it for this part of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
We have, from rock slides to Christmas cards, from political debates to handball matches, the Faroe Islands are never boring.
That's for sure. But the journey's not over yet. We have one more part of our deep dive, and we'll be focusing on one story in particular that ties a lot of these threads together.
Stay tuned to find out what it is.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive. We've talked about a lot, from the wild weather to those close handball matches. But there's one story that keeps popping up, you know, like it just won't go away.
I think I know which one you mean. Vernie Johansson's resignation. It just seems to connect to so much of what we've been discussing.
Exactly. The political scene, the local elections, all the trouble forming a government in Vagar. It's like his decision is having a ripple effect.
It is, isn't it? It makes you wonder how things are going to shake out. What happens to the Social Democrats? And what about those coalition talks?
So many questions, but we're all about the facts here, right? No speculation. So let's just go back to what Jarni Johansson said himself. VP.ho had that quote from him explaining why he left.
It was short, but it said a lot. Should we read it again?
Let's do it. Okay, here it is. I dag hafi jeg meldad meg ur javnar flokkinom og tasum en banleidis avleiing av distriri og taimomosum I hava veri I sambandi vi kommunuvali.
So basically, all the conflict and disagreements during the local elections, the Communuvali, that's why he left the Social Democrats.
It's intense, isn't it? Even local politics can get pretty heated.
Yeah, it can. Makes you wonder what's going to happen next. Will new leaders step up? Will Vagar finally get a stable government?
We'll have to wait and see. Faroe's politics, always keeping us on our toes. But, thinking about all the things we've talked about, it shows you that even though the Faroe Islands are small, they're dealing with some pretty big issues.
I agree. We've got international relations, the economy, those questions about identity and belonging. It's a lot to handle.
It is. But I think that's what makes this place so fascinating. There's always something happening, always something to learn.
Exactly. It's a dynamic place, full of energy.
So that's our deep dive into the news from the Faroe Islands. We hope you enjoyed it. We've covered a lot, but there's always more to explore.
Keep your eyes and ears open. There's always something new happening here.
Until next time, everyone.
Take care.